There is a moment, somewhere between the noise of the world and the quiet beating of your own heart, where a doorway opens. A doorway most people spend their entire lives avoiding. It is the doorway of solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude. That ancient, sacred territory where the soul finally speaks in a voice the world cannot drown out. Many fear solitude because they sense its power. It strips away distraction, dissolves illusions, and reveals truths we are not always prepared to face. For thousands of years, mystics, sages, and hermits have stepped willingly into this silent realm, not to escape life, but to understand it more fully. They knew something we have forgotten, that the greatest revelations do not happen on mountaintops, in temples, or in crowded ceremonies. They happen in the quiet moments when you are alone with your own consciousness. But here is the secret that almost no one tells you. Solitude is not just an emotional state. It is a spiritual technology. A catalyst that rewires the mind, awakens intuitive intelligence, and aligns you with the deeper architecture of your destiny. In today's video, we will explore the hidden spiritual purpose of solitude, why ancient masters revered it, why modern society suppresses it, and how you can use it to accelerate your growth, clarity, and transformation. We will journey through esoteric traditions, forgotten wisdom, and cutting-edge spiritual psychology. And by the end, you may never see being alone the same way again. Prepare yourself. What you are about to hear is not advice. It is an initiation. Long before the modern world filled itself with perpetual motion and glowing screens, solitude was not seen as a burden. It was a rite of passage. A requirement. A sacred step in the training of the human spirit. Every ancient tradition, from east to west, recognized that the soul speaks most clearly in silence. In ancient Egypt, neophytes of the mystery schools were required to spend days, sometimes weeks, in darkness chambers carved beneath the temples. The priests believed that without isolation from external stimulation, the mind could not pierce through the illusion of the physical world. In that stillness, students reported visions, intuitive downloads, and encounters with their own Ka, their higher spiritual double. The Greeks had their own version. The philosophers of the Stoic and Neoplatonic traditions often retreated into the mountains or seaside caves to confront the patterns of their own minds. Plotinus insisted that the soul must withdraw into itself to remember its origin. For him, solitude was not a luxury. It was a path back to the divine blueprint from which all consciousness emerges. In India, yogis, sadhus, and forest monks left behind villages and cities, believing that the noise of the world kept the mind tied to illusion, Maya. The Upanishads, some of the oldest spiritual texts in existence, were said to be heard in deep solitude, as if whispered by the universe itself to those who were finally quiet enough to listen. Meanwhile, in Chinese Taoism, sages like Lao Tzu sought the valley spirit, the hidden intelligence that reveals itself only in emptiness. According to Taoist teaching, solitude is how one aligns with the effortless flow of existence, the Wu Wei, because it dissolves the ego's resistance to the natural rhythm of life. Even in the Abrahamic traditions, solitude appears as the crucible of transformation. Moses ascended the mountain alone. Jesus retreated into the desert alone. Muhammad received revelation in a cave alone. Across cultures, the pattern is the same. When a person is destined to awaken, they are first pulled away from the crowd and immersed into silence. But why? Why does solitude appear at the heart of every spiritual tradition? Because solitude strips away all the identities you've borrowed from others. It shows you who you are when no one is watching, when no one is telling you what to believe, how to behave, or who you should become. In solitude, the masks fall. The projections of society dissolve. And the authentic self, the one you've carried through lifetimes, begins to rise like a memory you had forgotten. Philosophically, Solitude is the reset point of human consciousness. It realigns you with the inner observer, the one part of you untouched by chaos, noise, and the dramas of daily life. This observer is what ancient mystics called the soul, the Atman, the spirit, the higher self. When you return to this quiet center, you return to your power. Solitude was never meant to be an escape. It is a return to the essence of who you are beneath the layers of conditioning. And that is why ancient masters sought it deliberately. Not because they were running from the world, but because they were seeking the truth hidden beneath it. If the ancient world revered solitude as a gateway to higher consciousness, then the question becomes, what exactly happens to the human spirit when it enters silence? Why does solitude transform people in ways that ordinary life never could? To understand this, we must look beyond psychology, beyond productivity advice, beyond the modern obsession with self-care. Solitude is not simply the absence of people, it is the presence of yourself. And most people have never truly met themselves. Let us begin by exploring the three invisible mechanisms that are activated when a person enters solitude. The dissolving of external influence, the awakening of inner perception, the recalibration of energetic identity. These mechanisms form the foundation of why solitude has always been considered a spiritual accelerator. 1. The dissolving of external influence from birth. You are shaped by the voices around you, parents, teachers, society, culture, the digital world. Before you ever form your own identity, the world hands you a pre-written script. This is how you must think. This is what you must want. This is who you should be. You live in an invisible web of expectations, but solitude cuts these threads. Imagine your mind as a lake. Every conversation, every argument, every piece of information thrown at you is like a stone tossed into that lake. The surface becomes disturbed, rippled, impossible to see through. When you enter solitude, the stones stop being thrown. The waves begin to settle, and for the first time, the water becomes still enough for you to see your own reflection. This is why the beginning stages of solitude are often uncomfortable. When the noise stops, all the buried thoughts you've been avoiding rise to the surface. Your fears, your desires, your unprocessed emotions. People mistakenly think solitude creates discomfort. It does not. It merely reveals what was already there, beneath the distractions. Ancient mystics understood this perfectly. They were not seeking peace in solitude. They were seeking truth. And truth often arrives wearing the mask of discomfort. But once the surface settles, a new kind of clarity emerges, one that cannot be found in conversations, books, or external guidance. It is the clarity of self-recognition. 2. The awakening of inner perception. After external influence dissolves, another shift begins, one far more subtle and mysterious. Your senses start to turn inward. You begin to hear in a different way. You begin to see in a different way. Thoughts no longer feel like thoughts. They feel like transmissions from a deeper layer of consciousness. This is the moment when solitude transforms from being alone into being connected. Modern science still struggles to explain this, but ancient traditions describe it clearly. When you are alone, you connect with the higher frequencies of your own being. The Tibetans call it the voice beneath thought. Hermeticists call it the inner teacher. Sufis call it the whisper of the heart. The Upanishads call it the self that shines in silence. These are not metaphors. They are literal descriptions of an inner intelligence that awakens when the mind descends into quiet. Think of your consciousness as a radio. Most of the time, it is tuned to the human frequency, the noise of the world, the opinions of others, the chatter of your own ego. But solitude allows you to turn the dial, and, suddenly, you begin receiving signals from higher stations. You start sensing things you've always known but never articulated. You start recognizing patterns in your life that once seemed random. You start realizing that intuition is not irrational. It is a form of intelligence that was drowned out by noise. This shift in perception is why so many breakthroughs occur in solitude. Artists receive their greatest ideas. Inventors discover their solutions. Mystics receive visions. Ordinary people experience clarity they didn't know they were capable of. Because in silence, your inner channels open. 3. The recalibration of energetic identity. We now arrive at the most esoteric, and perhaps the most misunderstood, aspect of solitude. When you are around others, you unconsciously blend with their energy. You pick up their moods, their beliefs, their fears, their projections. Your aura, the energetic field around your body, begins to resonate with the frequency of the environment. This is why you feel tired after certain interactions, inspired after others, and drained in crowded places. Solitude breaks this energetic entanglement. Your field retracts. Your energy returns to its natural frequency. Layers of emotional residue begin to fall away like dust shaken off a garment. In ancient esoteric systems, this was considered essential. You cannot ascend to a higher state of consciousness while vibrating at the frequency of other people's expectations. Solitude allows your true energetic identity to emerge. Imagine that your soul is a tuning fork. Every interaction with others knocks it slightly off pitch. But when you are alone, the tuning fork vibrates freely and gradually returns to its original, pure tone. This recalibration is not just spiritual, it is measurable. People often report feeling lighter, thinking more clearly, becoming more intuitive, sensing their emotions more authentically, experiencing spontaneous creativity or insight. This is the genuine fragrance of your spirit, something society rarely gives you enough space to encounter. Why most people fear solitude? Knowing all this, you might wonder, if solitude brings clarity, inner awakening, and energetic freedom, why do people avoid it? Because solitude forces you to confront the truth of yourself. In solitude, you cannot hide behind roles. You cannot distract yourself with noise. You cannot bury pain under busyness. You cannot pretend to be who the world expects. Solitude shows you what is real, and also what has been false. And nothing terrifies the ego more than losing its illusions. But for the soul, solitude is liberation. The first half of the core wisdom. To summarize the essence of what we have uncovered so far, solitude is the dissolving of the world's influence, the awakening of inner perception, and the return of your energetic identity to its original state. It is not an escape. It is a purification, a remembrance, a recalibration. And this is only the beginning. In the next part, we will go even deeper into the hidden dimensions of solitude that most traditions never speak about openly. If part 1 revealed the visible mechanisms of solitude, the dissolving of influence, the awakening of perception, the recalibration of energy, then part 2 leads us deeper into the inner sanctum of spiritual isolation. Here we explore the hidden truths that ancient masters rarely spoke of directly. The truths reserved for initiates who had already proven they could sit with their own consciousness without fleeing from it. Solitude, at its highest level, is not a practice. It is a portal. And this portal leads to 3 profound transformations: the confrontation with the shadow, the emergence of the true will, the alignment with the soul's path. These are not abstract concepts. They are the inner shifts that determine the entire trajectory of a human life. 1. The confrontation with the shadow. Every person carries a shadow. Not a dark side in the moral sense, but the unintegrated parts of themselves, the traumas, fears, suppressed desires, and unresolved emotions absorbed throughout life. In ordinary society, The shadow hides easily behind work, social interaction, entertainment, and noise. But in solitude, the shadow steps forward. This is why many people panic when they are alone. They do not fear the silence, they fear the truth that silence reveals. But here lies the paradox. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your wounded self, carrying lessons, memories, and power you have abandoned. In ancient Hermetic teaching, the shadow was seen as the guardian of the threshold. To pass into higher consciousness, you must first face what you have refused to acknowledge. It's me. This confrontation may look like anxiety rising for no reason, sadness emerging from nowhere, forgotten memories resurfacing, old wounds reappearing, intrusive thoughts you never realized you held. Modern psychology calls this integration. Mystics called it purification. The alchemists called it the black phase, the first step in turning lead into gold. In solitude, this black phase begins automatically, not to punish you, but to free you. Because once the shadow reveals itself, you gain something priceless. The power to transform it. Solitude is the furnace in which the fragmented self becomes whole. 2. The emergence of the true will after confronting the shadow. Something extraordinary happens. Your true will begins to awaken. Not willpower as the world defines it. Not motivation, determination, or ambition. True will, as understood by mystics, Taoists, yogis, and Hermetic adepts, is the deepest directive of your soul. It is the inner compass that points toward your purpose. Most people live their entire lives following borrowed desires, wanting things society told them to want, chasing success defined by others, living lives that are not authentically theirs. But in solitude, those artificial desires lose their power. When the voices of others fade, you begin to ask, what do I actually want? What feels natural to my spirit? What path calls to me without external reward? And the answers begin to arise from within, not from conditioning. This emergence of true will is why solitude often leads people to change careers, leave relationships, start creative projects, shift spiritual paths, break generational patterns, rediscover long-buried dreams because for the first time, they hear the voice beneath their programming. This internal alignment is not impulsive or reckless. It is clarity, deep, grounded, undeniable clarity. In Taoism, this was described as the heavenly mandate, the inner direction one must follow to remain in harmony with the Tao. In yogic tradition, it was called Dharma, the soul's natural flow. In Hermeticism, it was known as the true will, distinct from the ego's desires. Solitude is the condition in which this inner directive becomes audible. 3. The alignment with the soul's path. Once the shadow is faced and the true will has emerged, solitude reveals its final power. Alignment. This is the stage where everything begins to change. Your intuition sharpens. Synchronicities increase. Your inner and outer worlds begin to move in the same direction. People, opportunities, insights, and events start aligning themselves with your path. This is not magic, it is energetic coherence. When your internal frequency becomes stable, the external world responds. Mystics often describe this as the universe speaking back, walking the path laid before you, the soul drawing its destiny closer, life arranging itself around clarity. This alignment can feel like meeting the right mentor at the right time, stumbling upon a book that answers your deepest question, receiving intuitive messages through dreams, feeling guided without knowing how, experiencing internal certainty even when the path ahead is unclear. Modern language might call this flow. Spiritual language calls it alignment. Esoteric language calls it attunement. And all of it begins in solitude. Because only in solitude does your inner signal become strong enough to resonate outward. The hidden reason solitude is essential for spiritual growth. Here is the truth most people never realize. You can only grow spiritually to the degree that you can be alone with yourself. If you cannot face your thoughts, you cannot transcend them. If you cannot sit with your shadow, you cannot integrate it. If your desires are shaped by others, you cannot follow your true path. If your energy is entangled with the world, you cannot rise above it. Solitude is the crucible in which awakening becomes possible. It is the classroom where the soul teaches you directly. It is the sanctuary where you meet yourself without distortion. It is the training ground where your inner clarity becomes unshakable. This is why, in every tradition, the most awakened individuals spent long periods alone, not because they rejected the world, but because they were preparing to return to it from a higher state. The paradox of spiritual solitude. There is a paradox to all of this. The more comfortable you become with solitude, the more deeply you can connect with others. Because solitude removes neediness. It dissolves insecurities. It clarifies boundaries. It strengthens authenticity. It awakens compassion. It roots you in your true self instead of social masks. In other words, solitude makes relationships better. It makes creativity richer. It makes decision-making clearer. It makes life more intentional. Solitude was never meant to separate you from the world. It was meant to prepare you for a deeper participation in it. And that is the real spiritual purpose of solitude. Not emptiness, not withdrawal, not isolation, but transformation. If everything we've explored so far describes the spiritual theory of solitude, then this section is where the teachings become real, where knowledge turns into practice, and where solitude transforms from an idea into a powerful instrument for inner alchemy. Solitude is not something you wait for. It is something you cultivate, something you create with intention, like lighting a sacred lamp within your own consciousness. Below are the most effective, practical ways to harness solitude as a spiritual catalyst. These techniques come from ancient traditions, modern psychology, and the timeless mechanics of the human soul. 1. The ritual of entering solitude. Solitude is most powerful when approached ritually, not as an escape from the world, but as a conscious descent into your inner realm. Before entering solitude, pause. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow breaths and mentally declare, "Now, I enter the inner world." This simple act signals to your psyche that you are shifting states, from outward attention to inward awareness. Ancient mystics always used rituals. Monks rang bells, yogis burned incense, Hermetic adepts washed their hands before meditation. Not because the actions were magical, but because they prepared the mind. Choose your ritual. Lighting a candle, sitting on a specific cushion, journaling a single sentence, listening to a short mantra, touching your heart with your hand. The ritual becomes a doorway between worlds. 2. The practice of silent observation. The first exercise of solitude is also the simplest. Observe. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. No goal, no technique, just awareness. Notice your thoughts as if they belong to someone else. Watch your emotions rise and fall like waves. Sense the subtle currents within your body. This practice reveals your mental landscape. Right. Over days or weeks, you begin to recognize patterns. Recurring fears, repetitive desires, unresolved memories, unconscious worries, intuitive impulses. Silent observation is the gateway to shadow integration and intuitive awakening. In Buddhism, this is called bare attention. In Hermeticism, inner stillness. In Taoism, returning to the root. The name doesn't matter. The effect is universal. 3. Dialogues with the shadow. Once silence reveals what lies beneath, The next step is to meet it consciously. When an uncomfortable emotion or memory emerges, do not push it away. Instead, ask, "What are you trying to show me?" You may be surprised at the response. Shadow work in solitude might include writing down troubling thoughts, speaking out loud to the parts of yourself you've ignored, asking deeper questions such as, "What do you need? What are you protecting me from? How long have you been carrying this?" Allowing suppressed emotions to surface without judgment, solitude offers a safe environment for these dialogues. There is no one to perform for, no one to impress, no one to hide from. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself. It is about listening to the parts of you that were never heard. 4. The path of inner creativity. When the deeper layers begin to integrate, creativity awakens naturally. This is why solitude produces poets, mystics, innovators, and visionaries. To activate this power, dedicate time to creative solitude. Free writing for 10-20 minutes, drawing symbols, shapes, or spontaneous images, composing music or humming intuitively, recording voice notes with ideas or insights, building mind maps of dreams, goals, or concepts. You do not need to be good at any of these things. The purpose is expression, not perfection. Creativity is how the soul speaks. In solitude, its voice becomes clear. 5. Intuitive listening and inner guidance. One of the most potent practices is learning to listen inwardly. Ask a question during solitude. What should I focus on now? What am I avoiding? What is my next step? Then sit in silence. Do not try to think of the answer. Let it rise. It may come as a sudden knowing, an inner whisper, a bodily sensation, an image, a memory, a thought that feels different, calmer, wiser. This is the awakening of intuitive intelligence. The more you practice, the clearer it becomes. 6. The energetic reset technique. To recalibrate your energy field, use this simple but powerful exercise. Sit comfortably. Place one hand on your heart, the other on your abdomen. Breathe slowly. Visualize your energy retracting from the world, from people, from places, from past moments, from future worries. See it returning to your body like threads being pulled back into a center. You may feel warmth, tingling, emotional release, sudden calm, clarity. This is your aura returning to its natural frequency. Do this for 5 minutes daily, especially after social interactions or emotional stress. 7. Micro doses of solitude. Spiritual solitude does not require a monastery. You can cultivate it in small moments embedded in everyday life. 5 minutes in your parked car, a silent walk without music, turning off your phone for short intervals, eating one meal in complete silence, sitting under a tree without distractions, taking a slow shower while focusing only on sensation. These microdoses accumulate, slowly reshaping your nervous system and reconnecting you with your inner world. 8. Extended solitude sessions. Once you become comfortable with shorter periods, explore longer sessions. 1 to 2 hours on a Sunday morning, a half-day retreat for yourself, a phone-free afternoon, periodic solitude fasts, a weekend spent mostly in silence. These extended sessions reveal deeper layers and accelerate transformation, but always move gradually. Solitude should challenge you but not overwhelm you. 9. Overcoming common obstacles. Obstacle 1. Restlessness. When silence becomes uncomfortable, focus on your breath for a few minutes to stabilize your mind before returning to observation. Obstacle 2. Emotional waves. Welcome them. They are signs that the shadow is releasing. Obstacle 3. Fear of being alone. Remember, you are not meeting emptiness. You are meeting yourself. your true companion across lifetimes. Obstacle 4, guilt for taking time alone. Solitude is not selfish. It is maintenance for the soul, like sharpening a blade before cutting through life. Obstacle 5, expectation of immediate results. Solitude works subtly. Its effects accumulate quietly, like water shaping stone. 10. The integration phase. The purpose of solitude is not to remain isolated, but to return to the world transformed. After each session, reflect. What did I feel? What did I learn? What shifted inside me? What will I now release? What will I now embody? This reflection solidifies the insights and carries the transformation into daily life. The goal is to live from your inner world, not merely visit it. The practical essence of solitude. To summarize, solitude is a practice of reconnection. Question with your thoughts, with your emotions, with your intuition, with your energy, with your soul, with your true direction. It is not isolation, it is alignment. When practiced intentionally, solitude becomes the most powerful spiritual technology available to any human being. It purifies, it awakens, it clarifies, it strengthens, it transforms. And most importantly, it returns you to yourself. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when the seeker realizes that the answers they were chasing in the world were quietly waiting within them all along. Solitude is the doorway to that moment. Throughout this exploration, we have peeled back the layers of what solitude truly is, not the loneliness modern society fears, but the sacred territory ancient masters revered. A space where the illusions of the world dissolve, where the soul begins to speak, and where the true self stands unobstructed, like a mountain revealed after the fog has lifted. Solitude is not an escape from life. It is the foundation for living it consciously. When you step into silence, the world does not disappear. Your deeper world simply becomes audible. Your inner teacher awakens. Your intuition sharpens. Your true will rises with clarity. Your energy becomes your own again. You face the shadow. You reclaimed forgotten parts of yourself. You discovered desires that were never yours, and you released them. You sensed new paths emerging, quietly at first, then unmistakably. And perhaps most importantly, you learned that solitude is not a punishment. It is a homecoming, a return to the essence you carry beneath every role, every mask, every story the world has given you. Yet solitude is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. Because the purpose of solitude is not to make you withdraw from the world, but to prepare you for it. It equips you to re-enter life from a place of strength rather than fragmentation, clarity rather than confusion, authenticity rather than performance. A person who knows how to be alone walks differently through the world. Their presence is steady. Their choices are intentional. Their relationships are healthier. Their creativity flows freely. Their intuition becomes a trusted companion rather than a faint whisper. Such a person no longer lives by reaction. They live by alignment. This is the spiritual purpose of solitude, to strip away the noise long enough for you to hear your own frequency, and then to build a life that matches it. If you feel called to solitude, listen to that call. It is not a sign of disconnection. It is a sign of awakening. Your soul is asking for space to breathe, to heal, to reclaim its voice. Start small. Begin with minutes. Expand into hours. Eventually, solitude will stop feeling like being alone and will begin to feel like returning to your inner sanctuary. And from that sanctuary, you will be able to move through the world with a clarity and presence that few people ever discover. Before this video ends, I invite you into one final moment of awareness. Ask yourself, when was the last time I heard my own voice without interruption? Not the voice shaped by expectations or fears or the opinions of others, but the voice that belongs solely to you. If it has been a long time, then perhaps this is your sign. A nudge from the deeper dimensions of your being. A reminder that the path forward begins not with more noise, but with silence. In solitude, you do not lose the world. You rediscover your place within it. And when you emerge from that inner space, clearer, lighter, more aligned, the world itself will respond differently to you. Because when a person becomes grounded in their true self, reality begins to rearrange around that truth. This is the silent magic of solitude. Its quiet miracle. Its sacred purpose. So walk toward the silence, not to escape life, but to meet yourself. Not to withdraw, but to awaken. Not to shrink, but to expand. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the birthplace of all genuine connection. And when you finally learn to stand comfortably in your own presence, you become someone the world cannot shake.